Hello, bass players at St. Martin of Tours. Just wanted to get you started on how to properly tune your bass using a tuner. Now, the tuner I'm going to use today is called a Snark tuner and actually has a physical clip on it. You'll see that there's a little bit of a coating, a rubber coating that fits on the inside and on this bottom part of the clip. This you're going to actually clip to the head of the guitar. You can either clip it on the end, or if you're, depending on the size of your guitar, you can clip it here. This one is a little tight, so I'm going to stick it here on the end. Essentially, when you're tuning your guitar, you're basically changing the tightness of the strings. Okay, you're changing the tightness of the strings and therefore changing how high the note vibrates or how low the note vibrates. So there's what we call standard tuning on the bass. And on the bass, the standard tuning notes are E, the thickest string, A, D, and then the thinnest string, G. So it's E, A, D, G. Using this tuner, if you use this tuner, I recommend using this one because it's kind of the easiest to use. You'll see that it has a button on the front. And when you turn that button on and you play one of the strings, it shows you the note that's vibrating. Now you'll see I just played my E string. And this bass is pretty close to being in tune, if not pretty much in tune. However, if I, as it happens to happen sometimes, is when it gets knocked around in its bag, or when it gets thrown down when you go home, or you just gets jostled around, these tuning pegs will get moved, and then the strings will get out of tune again. What I recommend doing is, if it's a first time for you tuning, I recommend you loosening each one of the strings. So you'll notice there's one way that it's a little tighter, and then the opposite way makes it a little looser and it's easier to turn it. You're going to want to start by turning it a little loose, so you know for a fact that in order to bring it up into tune to that note, you're going to have to tighten it, if that makes sense. So you're going to go to each tuning peg to start the first number of times that you tune it, and you're going to loosen each one of those strings. Each one of those tuning pegs, you're going to loosen it. So if you're changing the tuning peg here, and it feels like you're making it tighter and it's hard to turn, you're going to go the opposite way and loosen it. That makes the strings looser. And that means that to bring it up into tune, you need to make sure that you're tightening the string. So, in other words, I'm going to play what was and what is my E string, and we're going to see if it brings up anything on our tuner here. So you'll see what was an E before has dropped down to a D. I can make it even looser to illustrate a point. So that's gone all the way down to a B. Now from this point, you're going to want to use tiny movements. And as you tighten it, you'll notice that it gets higher and higher till it's D, D sharp, and that means we're almost at E. Getting closer. And there's our E. Now there's another little kind of trick, is that when you're playing, I'll adjust this so you can see. When you're tuning one of your strings, sometimes, and you probably noticed when this was being tuned before, you'll notice that a random note would pop up right in the middle of when it's playing this. Some other note would pop up. That's because when you vibrate one of the strings, occasionally it'll make one of the other strings that you're not playing vibrate. So the tuner will pick that up and say, wait, I feel something else vibrating, and it's going to pick that up. Don't be surprised by that, because that happens. what we can do to prevent that is to actually what we call dampen the strings. So we'll cover them, all but the one that we're tuning, with our fingers, and it'll make sure that only one note comes up. Now it's fluctuating between E and F because E and F are very close to each other, and it's sensing the vibrations through the neck of this instrument. That's another thing that's really cool about this tuner, is that you can tune with the volume off, and you can probably hear that I have my volume on and my amp down here, but if I turn this off, it's still going to register it because it doesn't pick up the tuning of the note through the air, it picks it up through the vibration of the instrument. So you can tune completely silently, virtually. You can see it's still popping up there. I need to make sure I dampen my strings. There you go. Okay. So that's the basic of tuning each string. Now we've got our E string in tune. Now we need to tune our next string, which is our A string. I'll turn my volume back on so you can hear. So this is what our E string sounds like in tune. That's what it should sound like. Okay, now for our A string, what I like to do is I like to dampen the top string here with my thumb, and then my pointer finger, my left hand, so we know that only the A string is vibrating. And now we play the next string. So now that one's an F sharp. So we know that it's below the note that it should be because we loosened it before. So in order to make this an A, we need to come to our tuning peg up here, follow the string all the way to the peg. So this is the one that we're going to adjust for our A string. And then we're going to tighten that string gradually. So it's F sharp, G, going to go to G sharp, and then to our A. We're almost at our A. You'll notice multiple notes are coming up quickly just because I can't dampen and turn the peg at the same time, but that's okay. Almost, tiny bit tighter, and we want it as close to that little green mark in the center as possible. There it is. There's our A. Now we do the same thing with our next string, our D. Follow that D. I'll move back so you can see. Follow the D string all the way up to the tuning peg, which now it's going to be, in this bass, it's on the bottom. So let's see what that's coming up with. C sharp. So our C sharp is really close to our D. So all we need to do is tighten this a tiny bit. That's a little high. Good. So we have our E, then our A, and then our D. Now the next tone is going to be our G, but it's going to be out of tune. So let's tune it. F sharp, very close to our G, but we need to tighten it because we loosened it before. So we follow from the bottom thinnest string all the way to the top tuning peg, and that leads us to this one, which is going to change that note. So I'll play my G. I'm going to tighten it gradually. Tiny movements, not big movements. Almost there. There we go. And there it is. So your fully tuned bass should sound like this. E, A, D, G. Eventually, once you get really good at reading those notes and note reading in general and music reading, you won't have to do the thing where you loosen it every time. But that gives you a frame of reference for, you know for a fact that you're going to be tightening into the notes. It's when we start thinking like, wait, is this above or is it below? I'm not really sure. I can't find the note. I'm over tightening the string. or I'm loosening it too much because we don't know, because there's multiple notes, multiple octaves that we could be playing in, but the ones you want are the ones that I just played. And if you have any questions, please do feel free to email me. Highly recommend this tuner. Really, really good resource, and I always have these ready in class for you to use to tune at school. All right, happy playing. Okay, here I am again. There's one thing that I forgot to mention, was a technical detail with the tuner itself. Is that once you turn this tuner on, you'll see that it has a +5, and on the other side it has a -5. We call those cents, like money cents, but in this case it's used to denote how, if a note is flat, that would be negative on the negative side, so it'd be on this side. So as an example, if I play my G, and if I loosen it, you can see now that it's going towards the -5 cents side. You'll notice that it's negative. So that means that it's playing a little flat, and it's to the left of the note that we want. We want it right in the center, dead in the center green. On the other hand, if I over tighten it, that's too sharp. It means that it's too high. It's going into the +5 cents. So that means we have to loosen it. Again, anytime we make adjustments, it's very, very small, very smooth, because we don't want to be jumping the note all around the place by making huge turns, because then it gets really confusing and we have no idea if we're getting close to the note. And every time you turn it, it makes a big adjustment. So just very small, very smooth turns when you're doing those adjustments. I'll show you that one more time. So if I loosen it, so you can see my tuning peg, when I adjust, I make movements like this. Until it hits that green mark.